Jess returns home from his running practice and sits down to have breakfast with his family. While his sisters fight at the table, Jess doesn't seem to care. Since this is a daily routine, he's about to head out, but he returns asking about his sneakers. His mom, Mary, says that she threw them away since she doesn't want him to wear them anymore, and that he should wear one of his older sister's shoes instead. Jess complains, stating that he doesn't want to wear girly shoes, and his dad, Jack, shows up asking what's wrong. He tells Mary that they need to get a new pair for their son, but Mary calls him to the side and reminds him they're broke. So Jack tells Jess to manage with his sister's shoes and asks him to finish his chores before heading to school. Jess looks disappointed, but with no other options, he walks out with the pink shoes and picks up a marker on his way out. He covers the pink areas on the shoe with the marker and moves to do his chores. While he's in the family's greenhouse, the school bus arrives and he runs to meet it. As he walks past his little sister Maybelle to find a seat, a senior student named Janice throws her snack on Jess to make fun of him. Shortly after he sits, Maybelle comes over to sit beside him, but he pushes her away. At school, Jess gets bullied by two boys, Gary and Scott, while he's drawing in class. Unfortunately, the teacher, Mrs. Myers, thinks Jess is at fault, so she scolds him. As he sighs, disappointed with his life, the principal enters the class and introduces a new student named Leslie, who has just moved into town. During recess, Leslie tries to use the toilet, but Janice tells her to pay first. Leslie calls her rude, but before Janice gets violent, she leaves. Jess and the other boys prepare for their race, and they are surprised to find Leslie join them. Scott tries to get her to leave because only boys can participate, but he is shut down by Jess, who counters whether he is afraid of losing to a girl. The race starts and Jess takes the lead, with Maybelle cheering for him. However, Leslie suddenly passes him and eventually wins the race. Jess is unhappy, and Leslie tries to make friends with him, but he ignores her. When the school bus drops Jess and Maybelle at their house, they're shocked to see Leslie walking behind them. Jess asks if she's following him, but Leslie says she lives next door. While Jess doesn't seem to care much, Maybelle and Leslie talk about their Barbies before they head their separate ways. At home, Jess opens his drawing book to find that Maybelle has used it again. He confronts her about this, but Jack enters the room. Maybelle quickly runs to him. Jess says what happened, but Jack just returns it and tells Jess to finish his chores. Jess doesn't look happy about this, but he goes on to do his work anyways. The next day at school, the music teacher, Ms. Edmonds, arrives to take her class. Jess seems to have a crush on her. After class, the boys mess with Jess, and Leslie happens to see Jess' drawings and says he's the best artist she has ever seen. He thanks her for the compliment, and they head to Mrs. Myers' class. There, Mrs. Myers commends Leslie for writing a nice essay for her assignment. Leslie is called out to read out aloud, and as she does it, Jess is drawn towards her words as it inspires the artist within him. After she's through, Mrs. Myers tells the students to watch a TV program that will be part of their assignment. However, Leslie raises her hand to question another assignment since she doesn't have a TV at home. The other students laugh at her, but Mrs. Myers tells them to stop this and tells Leslie to write on anything she wants. Leslie is unhappy about this, and Jess watches her get ridiculed before she gets on the bus. Without thinking, Leslie happens to sit in Janice's place, and right before Janice shows up and Jess gets Leslie to sit with him. When they arrive home, Leslie asks Jess what he does for fun, and as he says nothing, she tells him they can find something to do. Maybelle wants to join them, but Jess tells her to go home. Maybelle doesn't look happy hearing this, and Leslie changes her mood by offering to give her dolls. After Maybelle leaves, Leslie says Jess is lucky to have a sister, but he says he'd trade them to have a dog. Leslie then says that even though she has always wanted to have a dog, she has never had one. After this, Jess and Leslie race into the woods. Jess asks Leslie about her assignment, and is shocked to hear that she made it up. As they walk further, they find a rope dangling from a tree over the creek. Leslie suggests swinging it, and Jess also joins her. After they're across, Leslie wants to find a place just for them. Jess isn't so sure about it, but she says they can imagine that there's a magical kingdom in the woods just for them. As they walk around, Jess sees some squirrels around, and shortly after, they find an abandoned car. As they hear the sound of keys dangling, Leslie says it's the sound of the chains of prisoners of a monster called the Dark Master. Jess thinks she is crazy to be enjoying herself in an imaginary world, but before he comments on it, Leslie sees something and tells him to follow her. Soon, Jess happens to see a strange shadowy creature in the woods. He ignores it, not thinking much of it. And after a while, they come upon an old treehouse. Leslie says it's an old fortress now being held by the Dark Master. She also sees some golden dragonflies and calls them her warriors. Jess says he doesn't understand the game because he cannot see what she sees. Leslie climbs to the top of the tree and asks if the kingdom's people can hear her. A strange wind blows, but Jess thinks it's only a coincidence. However, as the wind blows again, he begins to think there might actually be a magical kingdom. When he gets home later, it is all he thinks about, and so he decides to join Leslie again after school. Together, they spend their time making the old treehouse look better. The following day, Janice gets Jess kicked out of the school bus, and he has to walk home. He is surprised to find Leslie waiting for him with her face and clothes stained with ketchup. She tells him that Janice did that to her and pleads with Jess to let her go to his house to clean up since she doesn't want her parents to get worried. Jess agrees, and after she's done cleaning up, he introduces her to Mary and his older sisters before heading out. When they get to the fortress, some squirrels start throwing nuts at the place. Leslie says they're under attack by the Dark Master's warriors. Jess also imagines this, and he helps her fight back. Shortly after, Leslie tells him to climb to the top to see the whole kingdom better. While she sees a magical kingdom, Jess says he can only see a normal grass field. Leslie then tells him to open his mind, and after trying for some time, Jess finally sees the magical kingdom, which Leslie calls Terabithia. The next day is Jess' birthday, and his family surprises him with a small cake and a birthday present. At this time, Maybelle comes over to inform Jack that there's something in their greenhouse. He immediately checks and sees that an animal has broken in. Jack is sad and angry about this. He says he'll kill the animal the next time he sees it. Jess thinks this is harsh, but doesn't mention it out loud. The next day, Leslie gives Jess a painting set as his birthday present. Jess doesn't think he deserves it since it looks expensive, but Leslie tells him to keep it. Later that day, they are in Terabithia, and a tree falls against the treehouse while Leslie and Jess are still inside. Jess is terrified because they could have gotten injured, but Leslie says it's a giant troll sent by the Dark Master. Despite looking scared, Jess follows Leslie to look for the giant troll. They don't see anything, and Leslie says that they need to get a troll hunter to fight the giant troll. The next day, Jack's trap catches the animal that broke into the greenhouse. Jess happens to find it first and decides to set it free. After he returns home, Jack discovers what Jess did and confronts him about it. Jess says the animal won't come back, but Jack tells him otherwise since it doesn't work that way, and that Jess needs to get his head out of the cloud. Jess is sad to hear this, and it bothers him throughout the day. On the way to school, Leslie asks when they'll start hunting the giant troll, and Jess tells her to stop because there's no giant troll in the woods. Leslie doesn't give up and tells Jess that the Terabithians expect their king to save them from the troll. Just then, Jess sees a place where a dog has been put up for adoption. The next day at school, Maybelle tells Jess that Janice took away her snack. Leslie also says that Janice needs to be stopped because she charges students for using the toilet. Leslie then leads a small protest against Janice, and there, Maybelle tells Jess to fight for her. However, he takes her away and says he can't do that because he could get suspended. As he walks away, Leslie tells Maybelle not to worry because they'll get Janice later. When Jess gets home that night, he thinks about what Leslie said about him being the king of Terabithia. The following day, he tells Leslie that he's ready to go hunting. He also happens to have adopted the dog that will be their troll hunter. Leslie looks happy to now have a dog and she names him Prince Terrian. Soon after, they find the giant troll. Before it can do anything to them, Prince Terrian appears to tickle the troll, and this gets it off their backs. Later, Leslie and Jess start thinking of ways to get back at Janice. Leslie asks if Janice likes any boys, and Jess says there's one. Together, they compose a fake letter from the boy telling Janice how much he likes her. They successfully drop the letter at her table, and the plan works quite well, with the boy snubbing Janice after she had announced to everyone that he liked her. This gets her embarrassed, but Leslie and Jess are happy to get their revenge. When the school bus drops them off, Leslie sees her parents doing some work on the house, so she asks Jess for help. He agrees and spends his time with Leslie's parents to paint their house. Leslie's dad, Bill, also praises Jess' painting skills and says he has the hands of a talented artist. The next day at school, Gary and Scott bump into Jess, so his drawing book falls. Ms. Edmonds sees it and asks if he's taking art classes, but he says he's not. She then tells him that he's really talented and he shouldn't let what the other kids think get to him. Later, Jess joins Leslie to get back at Janice, but they hear Janice crying in the girls' restroom. After contemplating what to do because they feel sorry for her, Jess tells Leslie to speak to Janice. She does this, and after school, Jess asks what happened. Leslie says Janice's dad always hits her. She also says that some of Janice's friends found out and started teasing her. As they're talking, rain starts falling, and they leave. In the following days, Jack is working on something in the house. He gives Jess his keys to pick up something in the greenhouse. After picking it, Jess sees Maybelle inside the greenhouse and tells her to get back inside. Following this, Jess goes inside and falls asleep. In the morning, Jack wakes Jess and asks for his keys because Jess never returned them. Jess checks for it but doesn't find it, and Jack gets angry because he'd have to spend a lot of money to replace the locks. Jess tells Jack he'll find the keys. On his way to school, Leslie sees that Jess doesn't look happy and asks what happened. He tells her about the key and she says she has something to confess. Jess sees Maybelle acting weird and Leslie confesses that the keys are in Terabithia. She says that Maybelle gave it to her to decorate their fortress. Jess is not happy to hear this, and soon after they get back from school, he and Leslie head over to Terabithia. They see the water level in the creek is increasing but think nothing about it. They go across it, but as they're about to get the key, they get attacked by the Dark Master's soldiers. Jess and Leslie fight back but find that they are outnumbered, but the Dragonfly soldiers come to help them. After that, Jess climbs the tree to get the key, but a blaze bird attacks him and he falls from the tree. Luckily, the giant troll appears and catches him. Jess opens his hands to show that he got the keys, and as they leave, the rain starts falling. Jess doesn't think much as he watches Leslie pick up Prince Tarion and returns home. The next day, Maybelle tells Jess that he got a call from his girlfriend. Jess tells her off and finds that Ms. Edmonds has called him. She invites him to join her for a visit to the museum since it's a Saturday. Since Jack is not home, Jess asks Mary, who is still sleeping, and she reluctantly says yes. Jess then accepts Ms. Edmonds' invitation, and she picks him up shortly after. As they're about to leave, Jess thinks about inviting Leslie too, but he decides against it. He and Ms. Edmonds reach the museum, and they have a good time. Later that day, Ms. Edmond drops him off and he tells her that he had a great time. As Jess enters his house, Mary quickly runs forward to hug him and says they were worried. Jess is shocked to hear this since he told her before he left, but his sisters say that they thought he was dead. Jess is confused as to what they are talking about, and Jack tells him that his friend Leslie is dead. He tells Jess that Leslie drowned in the creek after the rope snapped while trying to swing across and she hit her head. Jess doesn't believe this and runs outside. He sees the police cars in front of Leslie's house. He then runs back inside his house, locks the door, and looks at his drawing of Leslie before falling asleep. The next day, Mary suggests they go see Leslie's parents to pay their respects. When they get there, Prince Tarion greets Jess and Bill hugs Jess. He mentions that they moved here since Leslie had no friends and wanted her to have a change here, and thanks Jess for being her friend. Bill also mentions that Leslie loved Jess and he's the best friend she ever had. Jess sees the silhouette of Leslie walking past him, and as he follows it, he sees Ms. Edmonds and tells her that they should have invited Leslie to the museum. The next day, the bus driver consoles Jess as he gets on, and at school, Scott tells Jess that he will no longer be second place in the race, but Jess is not having any of it. He punches Scott, and this forces Mrs. Myers to take him out to the hallway. She consoles him and tells him not to be too hard on himself. In the next class, Jess lies down as he cries, thinking about Leslie. After that, Gary bullies Jess and walks away. Janice sees this and Jess notices him walking over to the bus with a bloody nose, after which Janice sits next to Jess on the school bus. As the bus drops him off, Jess decides to go to Terabithia. While walking around, he hears someone calling him and he thinks it's Leslie. However, it turns out to be Maybelle, who is about to fall into the creek. He saves her and tells her to go home, but she wants to join him. Jess pushes her angrily and tells her to leave him alone. Maybelle runs back crying and meets Jack. Shortly after, Jess sees the Dark Master and starts running, but he trips and falls down and apologizes. Jack comes to pick him up and Jess cries as he says it's his fault that Leslie died, and that he should have invited her along to the museum. Jack tells him not to blame himself, and that all he needs to do is to hold on to the memories he shared with Leslie. Following this, Jess goes to say sorry to Maybelle, but she ignores him. He puts his drawing of Leslie on a small wooden raft and lets it float away in the creek. When he leaves, he sees Bill leaving. Jess runs after him and asks if he can use the lumber at his house, and Bill agrees. Bill then says he wanted to give Prince Tarion to Jess, but Jess says Leslie would have wanted him to keep the dog. Jess leaves as Bill watches. Later, Jess takes the lumber and starts building something in Terabithia. After he completes what he was doing, he comes to find Maybelle and invites her to join him. She tells him to leave, but Jess mentions that she can be a princess if she comes. Interested, Maybelle takes his hand and he takes her to the bridge he built. Maybelle is excited to see this, and Jess introduces it as the bridge to Terabithia, and across is the magical kingdom. Before they walk in, he crowns her as the princess. He then tells her to open her mind to fully see the imaginary world. Soon, the world transforms before their eyes, and as she looks excited, the Terabithians come to welcome them. As they walk in, the giant troll crowns Jess as king, and Maybelle imagines how their new kingdom will look as they look towards the palace in the magical kingdom of Terabithia.